What's going on? Welcome to another episode of the Impel 4 podcast. I'm your host, Leon, and y'all already know who on the other side, my co-host, Renee.
Whoop whoop.
What's going on? We got another special one for you. It's going to be a good one.
Yeah.
At least we're going to try to make it good. You know, y'all going to let us know in the comments. Yeah, so we got a special guest. And we're going to bring him on. I'm going to introduce him once he come on. That's how I say his name. What's going on, bro?
Nothing much. How y'all?
Glad to have you. And this is Dasan Ahanu.
Yep.
Ahanu. I got it right.
Yeah.
Hey, look, this man put out an APB for podcasters.
Yes.
And look, Renee, she tagged me, and I think I seen it kind of late.
Somebody tagged me.
Oh, yeah? Oh, okay.
Yeah. Somebody tagged me, and then I was gonna get back to him and send him an email, but I was like, let me tag you 1st. So it just kind of went into a circle. But yeah, when he put out his APB, I got tagged. Many people got tagged, and you know, hopefully that worked out for you. But yeah, I was excited. I was like, hold on, I don't want to jump, too quick. Let me tag my co-host, and yeah, here we are.
I went in the comments. I seen people. I said, "Oh, let me hit them up real quick." Bop, bop, bop. But I think I heard from him a day later too. So out of the comments, are we the first podcast you've been on since then? Or okay, good.
Well, I'm excited. So tell the audience a little bit about you. I've already did my digging, so I already did my research. You still haven't accepted my friend request, but I'll wait.
I got it. I'm on it. I'm primarily, first and foremost, I'm an artist. I'm a poet, spoken word artist. That's how kind of all of this started for me. But I'm also recording and performing artist, playwright. I'm also an arts administrator, curator, and a cultural organizer. So just have kind of grown in love with art and culture and trying to help create capacity for myself and for other artists, especially as I've kind of just, moved through my career. And also, actively now working as a consultant, just trying to help organizations think differently about how to engage communities and also helping them, build and grow internally. So thinking about, arts leader, what does it mean to be, to be a leader, to think about, unlocking potential, and also what does it mean to be creative and imaginative in the way you do your work. So that's pretty much what I'm doing. I'm a Southern boy, born and raised in Raleigh, North Carolina. I live in Durham, North Carolina, and a lot of what I do is inspired by and is dedicated to the South.
So what was the reason for your post to get on the podcast? Come on the podcast.
Well, the most immediate thing was I had just released a new spoken word album.
Oh yeah.
Called Storyteller Volume 2. I had this idea last year of a lot of my work is narrative based. I use a lot of storytelling. I believe it's a way to be able to really engage folks and kind of help them see things from different perspectives. So I dropped an EP called Storyteller Volume 1. I got a good response and put this project together. So that was it. I was excited, had the project. I had dropped a new book of poetry earlier in the year. And I was like, I want to talk to some folks. I want to talk to some folks about what's going on, and I'm I love good conversation. So I just wanted to kind of connect, and so I put the call out, and so was happy to get a response because I'm here now.
Yeah. I was going to say, you forgot to say you were a writer. I was waiting for that. A writer, educator, all of the things. I told you I did my research.
Well, yes. I am an educator. I've been teaching for a long time, both a teaching artist and also working in formal education. And I've tried my hand at writing a lot of things. Putting pen to paper is a thing I love to do. Some things I enjoy more than others, but I'm definitely going to try it if I get an opportunity.
So what inspired you to become a poet? What were you seeing at a young age?
Well,
At a young age,
right. So my first introduction was a teacher. I was one of those folks who I always say I got tested instead of medicated, where you have that moment where, you know, everybody's like, oh, he's such a bright kid, but he's, you know, he doesn't sit still, he's, you know, all that. And someone was like, let's test him, because otherwise you can get Ritalin and you can get calmed down. And they were like, he's not being challenged enough. So I got moved and to accelerated classes is the way they talk about it around here. And then I got one of those English, you know, one of those teachers that just loved language and loved poetry. So I wrote my first poem in second grade.
Oh, wow. Do you remember it?
I don't. I do. Only thing that I remember is that I called the president a billy goat. I don't know why it was a political poem. I don't know what. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what.
You knew something was going on at that time.
I got a feeling that I had, you know, some hippie teachers at that point in time that planted a seed, and suddenly next thing you know, I'm calling the president a billy goat. I don't know, but because of that, when you hit your teen years, especially for dudes, puberty hits and you got all the emotions and everybody looks cuter. Poetry was an outlet, you know, and so that's sort of kind of what started, but it was pretty much something I did just to process until I started, you know, I got out of high school and was at college initially and started meeting folks who were like, no, I write. Oh, you write too? And I'm like, nah. But ultimately I ended up getting talked into going to a poetry event. And after a while, I kept getting asked, and I made the mistake of letting some folks know I wrote, and they were on me until I finally read a poem, and then everything kind of started moving from there. I kind of found a scene. I didn't know that poetry scenes exist. Love Jones came out. I didn't know that was real. I didn't know that really happened in real life. But I found out, no, there are places where this happens and folks read poems like this, and that whole thing is a real vibe. So, and I just got curious, and then I got sucked in.
How old was you around the time when you actually started writing and going places like in clubs like that?
Early, I was probably 23, 24, 23, 24. By the time, which is kind of, and these days it's a little late, but I was getting into my mid 20s by the time I ever really agreed to read a piece. Had dodged it for a while. When I initially went to school, I went to North Carolina A&T, and they had a whole kind of bohemian. You can get whatever kind of Black you are, you're gonna find it on campus. And they had a whole bohemian vibe, and folks who were, playing the djembe and writing and rhyming and all of that. And they tried to get me to come through. I'm like, nah, I'm not doing that. I was an extremely shy individual, and came back home, and found that there was a scene here. A lot of folks who were both in the area and then a lot of transplants, because I'm in a college town, big college area, had kind of, to put a scene together. And so, yeah.
So your letters in high school used to be amazing, right? The ladies loved it. You just pour your little heart out in rhythm.
Pouring my heart out. I was Mr. Good Listener, good. Oh, that makes so much sense as I'm helping somebody figure out, figure out their love life with somebody else. That whole Mr. Nice Guy angst-ridden thing. At least that's the way I saw it. It wasn't that bad for real, but that's the way I experienced it. So
yeah. Who inspired you to kind of make that push? I know you said you were shy and, you really didn't, I don't want to say take it seriously, but you really kind of didn't evolve or, put yourself out there until 23, 24. But who kind of inspired you to say, maybe I should dip my toe in just a little bit, or I'm on to something?
Hip hop was my initial motivation. That was my frame of reference. And, and so, whether it's like Rakim, whether it's Chuck D, whether it's Kane, whether it's Coogee Rap, whether it's, Jay, Nas, Big, whether it's, the lyricists, Black Thought, whether it's, UGK, Scarface. Scarface is one of my favorite of all time. Like anyone
my top five.
Really, really write and put like telling stories and could grab you. That was my inspiration. I knew about the traditional Black poets that you learn about in school. Hip hop was my framework. And then when I got into it, that is how I came to really understand the breadth of writers and poets. But initially it wasn't poetry that I would look to. It was hip hop. And from that, it led me kind of deeper into poetry. And I kind of started to kind of really, really study. But hip hop was my driving force. And anyone that was considered that we would, me and the homies would argue was like a real MC.
Yeah.
Was who I kind of looked to.
So when you write a poem, when do you know that you're gonna turn it into music, or no, I'm just leave this for a poem?
That's a good question. Early on, when I first started, kind of getting out into the scene, a lot of folks were treated music for their poetry as like a backing track, which means you had the poem and you just ran the instrumental in the back, jazz, soul, whatever, and there really wasn't a synergy. So there wasn't, unless you themed it a particular way, it wasn't really thought about. I love live music and I love musicians. And so I was really a student of just of music composition. I never played an instrument. I was too hyperactive. When it came to anybody who was trying to teach me, there wasn't any like, let me get tested or medicated. They were just like, I'm done with you. So my stepfather played bass and he tried a couple times. He was like, I can't. So, but I love music composition. And so for me, I got lucky because the way that I create is I'm a puzzle person. So I like to make things make sense. And so I was curious about song structure. And that's sort of what led me. And then it kind of led me to movements like the jazz poetry movement, dub, like these movements where there were last poets who were Gil Scott-Heron, Oscar Brown Jr., these folks who were making music. Ursula Rucker, who did all the stuff for the Roots, Big Roo, Medusa out on the West Coast, these poets who were also songwriters and lyricists. And so that changed my perspective. But initially when I got introduced to it, that wasn't the case. I'm just such a head for music that I wanted to participate, and I couldn't play an instrument and I can't sing. And I was making, I was into ciphers and rhyming, but poetry was my thing. So I was like, let me see if I could figure out how to be on this scene, on this hip hop scene, but also on this live jazz music scene, which is big here. There's some real dope music programs in the area that produce a lot of musicians, especially a lot of Black musicians. And like, how can I get on stage with them? And so that's where it's sort of kind of figuring out, how I can find a pocket, figure out how to make these poems work and figure out how to play with them the same way a vocalist would with a song.
Wow, I didn't even know North Carolina had such a huge kind of poetry, slam poetry kind of community here until I, of course, found you and did some digging and everything, which I'm happy about because that gives me something additional that I can add to do versus doing the same thing. So tell us more about that. You had an event, or there was an event last weekend.
Yeah, so I run the Triangles Adult Poetry Slam. Happens every third Saturday.
Okay.
February 2025, it'll be 20 years of being in Durham. We do the slam once a month. I use it as an opportunity to also send poets from the area off to regional and national competition. We've had some representatives, to bring home some championships from different competitions over the years, runner up, have top 10. It's been a wonderful it was an event that kind of turned into a program,
Okay.
but an opportunity to connect poets with other poets across the country. And for a while pre-pandemic, because the pandemic kind of just really turned touring and everything upside down. But prior to that, it was also a pit stop for a lot of touring artists, touring poets who were out on tour to come through. We give them a spotlight and feature them at that event as well. But so it's the slam scene kind of really blossomed sort of after 2005, 2006, and we've and then it kind of spread across the state. And so, and we've kind of been at the heart of that ever since. So yeah, it's we're in an African American Cultural Center, which is where we've been since 2005. So I really, value that we are able to kind of be in a historic place in Durham to offer this kind of programming. And so it's a lot of fun.
And you said you hold that at the Hayti? At the Hayti? Okay.
Hayti Heritage Center, right on Fayetteville Street. It's the community, the Hayti community is, one of our recognized Black Wall Streets in the country.
Yeah.
And it was a beautiful, vibrant Black neighborhood. That's sort of what we got, NC Mutual, which was the first Black-owned insurance company, Mechanics and Farmers Bank, like all of that kind of thing kind of came out of that community.
Oh, wow. Now, how does one get involved? Can, they walk up, maybe they have aspirations of, hey, I've been holding on to this. I think I'm going to do it. I'm going to go and see if I can get on stage.
Yeah, they can sign up. We open doors at 7:30. The show's at 8. And you can sign up. We do all the signups at the door. The website is bullcitypoetryslam.com. So anyone who's not familiar with the format can go and, read through just how everything kind of runs. But we also explain it to anyone who's new. We kind of walk them through it when they get there. And at any given night, we can take up to 12 poets into it. So Poetry Slam is a spoken word competition.
Okay.
And so there's like a competitive format to it. It was originally created as a bar game. Mm-hmm. And, while it is a spoken word competition, poets are totally allowed to read out of a journal, off their phone. Many do, but it's a really fun thing. And it was created as a way, is really an audience engagement tool, to kind of flip what's a traditional poetry reading on its head, because it was created in a bar. But it's because of the way that it allows you to engage, it kind of really blew up. And it was created in the 80s, and so now folks do poetry slams all over the world. So yeah, signups are at the door. Anyone who wants to give it a try is more than welcome. We try to make sure everybody feels good and welcome and loved when they come through.
I'm definitely going to attend. I won't get on stage. I won't try it, but I will definitely attend. I'll go for the vibes.
Yeah, definitely something I'll love to come to.
Yeah. Definitely
do that. So do you always perform your poetry with music or mostly without it? And what is the different feel or feelings that you get from doing either or?
Yeah. So it's been more of a mix, probably over the last decade. Initially, it was mostly just me on stage, rocking out. Like I said, I love any chance I got to collaborate. Occasionally, because I got a chance to work with a lot of North Carolina hip hop artists doing interludes and doing different things. So being able to kind of perform with them. But now it's way more of a mix. I have my own band, Eloquent Souls. I do a lot more shows with a 3-piece because, like I said, I love live music. And then also doing performances with backing tracks. There's a different feel, like the pocket and the zone is different, because when there's no music, it's the room. Like you've got to, and the thing that, you know, I teach is that the better you get at this, you go from needing the room to be a certain way to being able to get the room where you need them to be, so that you can all kind of like, because you need that energy when there's no band. Like you need it to be able to up the level of the, you know, of the experience. But the thing about having music, whether it's tracked out, you got a DJ, whether it's a band, is that sets the tone. Because each track, the vibe of each track, when it hits or the sample or whatever comes in, when the keys start, it automatically, everybody responds. And so you're able to fill the room with a particular kind of energy. And this experience for me, I want to have anytime I touch stage, I want us all to have an experience. That's what I'm looking for, is to create a moment. And so, you know, I enjoy both, but it is a different thing. And sometimes you work a little harder without that music, depending on what kind of room you're in.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of like singing a cappella with no music. Yeah.
Yeah, that's how you find out who the singers are.
Right.
I sound amazing in the shower. I don't know about, you know, so maybe it's the water that, you know, brings me in line. I don't know. But you talked a little bit, well, when you were during your description, with regards to consulting. How does that work as far as like schools, you work with, you know, different departments? I do see, you know, you've kind of mixed in some with some upcoming political figures within the North Carolina area. But tell us a little bit, how do you, you know, consulting and helping, you know, people out, I guess, per se.
Yeah, you know, I've had a lot of really interesting experiences, partly just as a means of survival. You know, I love North Carolina. I made a decision to stay home and invest in home, but we're not a metropolitan area.
Right.
And so part of that means to be able to stay hustling, I've had to be all over the state, you know, urban, rural. And so eventually it was like, I've had a chance to learn and see some things. And so what does that, you know, what kind of value can I offer to folks who are also working in these same communities to help them navigate? It's particularly when it comes to our folks, you know, when it comes to, you know, folks talking about they want to engage with Black and brown folks. I'm like, what are you really trying to do?
Right.
And the beautiful thing about art is that even if it's not me, when I'm in these spaces, I'm hearing the stories of how these things affect folks. Like I'm hearing it, and I'm hearing it in an honest way from young and old. Like if I go visit a school and I give a prompt and I kind of create a space, these young folks gonna tell me what's going on, right? The more comfortable they are with me, the more truth I get. And so I'm walking around with this information, and it was like, okay, so how can I start to use this? Now, you know, I'm lucky enough that I started off as an industrial engineer, but I got my undergrad is in organizational management. So like that process logistics thing. And then my graduate degree is in art and culture and creative writing. And so like these worlds make sense to me. And so it was sort of like, how can I be a bridge while also being able to kind of, you know, pay bills, take care of myself, and create and continue to be able to afford to create. One thing about being an artist is that it's, you know, it costs. You got to spend money to make money, because we you know, studio time costs, everything, you know, these projects and initiatives cost. And so it is something that you have to kind of invest in your career. And so being able to do that work, and then, of course, every time I'm able to work with an organization, that gives me a better understanding of how to help someone else out. And it's just kind of grown from there.
Yeah, I saw that you did an event at a barbershop, I believe, a while back. And so that made me kind of think about Leon, because Leon has 2 barbershops. So, and I remember at one point in time, you did have a live band come, which I thought was amazing. While, you know, people got their hair cut and, you know, still was able to socialize and build that community. So I think that's a great thing, because I love it.
Yeah, we used to kind of have like the tiny desk. We had it in the barbershop, the band. It was, I forgot how often we used to do it. I don't know if it was every Saturday, once a month, but it was pretty nice. It was pretty nice.
That's nice.
Yeah. I want him to bring it back. So that's why I threw it out there to not only, celebrate you, but also put a bug in his ear that he needs to bring that back.
Look, for sure. Yeah. I mean, everybody's coming to the barbershop. Matt Hoff in the barbershop, LeBron in the barbershop, everybody in the barbershop. I'm with you. That needs to happen.
I might bring that back down. You just sparked something right
there. Yeah. Now, tell us about Storyteller.
Yes.
Storyteller Volume 1, and then let's get into 2, which is your most newest project.
Yes. So, I consider myself to be a Southern storyteller in a tradition of everybody from pastor to big mama to, the uncle who makes everything sound better when he talks to, all of the writers and folks who've kind of, delivered these beautiful Southern stories. And I said, I want to capture that on record. And so what does that look like? And for me, I'm a hip hop head. So it's like, I want some music that moves, like that puts you in a place that when I put the words to it, everything, the scene, everything comes together. And so when I did the first one, there was, I had some pieces that I felt like would set the tone for everyone to kind of understand what this series was about. And I put Volume 1 on it just to kind of let everybody know, like, this is going to be a thing. Then I settled on 3 of those pieces that I wanted. And it's like, it was Medusa, which is inspired by this painting that was at the North Carolina Museum of Art. And I saw it and I immediately thought about, the way that we've been given the mythology of Medusa. It only to come to find out that it was just a beautiful woman with locks. Right. And so so like this idea that this person, that this figure who has been made to be horrendous, that turned people to stone, that was like, was actually a woman whose beauty was just unparalleled, and they turned her into this story. So like, that's what this poem's about. It's like this woman who no one else recognizes the beauty that they see. And so there was that. I'm a poet who always talks about love and relationships because, I like for us to not forget that part of us. And so, on there is just falling in love with the wrong person.
Mm-hmm.
I think I listened to that.
Yeah, and how long it takes before you realize
I listened to it.
Yeah.
Throughout my day. When I could, between meetings, I was able to listen to both.
And then the third one was Ant, which this amazing producer gave it to me. Immediately it sounded like a Spike Lee movie. So I really wanted to kind of, that was a really challenge, which kind of really set the tone for the second one, was that piece. Because it's called Ant, because the whole premise is that if you're at the top of a building, everybody on the ground looks like ants.
Right.
So there's a double entendre between the main character's name Ant, but like that idea, like he looks like an ant to the person who's writing the poem. But it tells this, like I said, it was Spike Lee. So it's kids, cats hustling on the corner. The main drug dealer and his best worker kind of have this tension. He ran away from home. Like there's this whole story that plays out, and I'm going through everybody on the block, how they work, how they move.
It's reminiscent to, what's the Spike Lee movie?
Not Mo Better Blues.
No.
I don't know a lot of the movies.
And it had the guy, and he was going to the girl's house. What was it? That's what it reminded me of. I have to come back to it. Yeah. So it was, that whole, the way he kind of paint the scene, whether it's, whether it's Crooklyn or, Do the Right Thing, or even She's Gotta Have It, like that. Yes, She's Gotta Have It. That's what it reminded me of. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, so that was the first one. And when I got that done, like I said, that track kind of set the tone. It was 3 different producers for that. But when I got ready to work on this second one, there is a collective of producers, young producers I've been knowing for a while. One of them was a former student of mine in college. And they were like, well, if you ever need us, let us know. And so I reached out to them, told them my idea, and we sat down and they started playing joints for me. And I was like, okay, we got something.
You do.
And everything came together from there. So they gave me the joints, I wrote everything. And then we just kind of built this project. The idea was to continue to build on this world. So like the MCU, where like this world just gets bigger, and you've got the cat on the corner, and there's a woman who's nobody recognizes her beauty, and then there's a relationship here, but then like 2 blocks over, what happens on the other, so then you just kind of expand. There's a church over there, there's a corner, like there's a store, there's a laundry, like what happens if we keep expanding it? And so that's the second one kind of works through that. You start to
What's your favorite one on the second one? What's your favorite?
I'm gonna tell you my 2.
I know. I mean, listen, out of the 9, what's your favorite one? Because I have 3.
It's so funny because at the listening party, I made everybody pick 3, and everybody fought me. But I have to say, I think it goes back and forth between Pieces of Time and Glory, but I think right now Glory is the one that it just does something to me every time it comes on.
Now I'm gonna tell you, and Glory is one of my favorites. Glory, and is it Aham? How you pronounce it?
Yeah. Yep.
So Renee, you may not know this, but Vet is on both of those songs, Glory and Aham, my cousin.
Really?
Yeah. The one who do the Herbalife with me.
Wow. Okay.
Songs, yeah. But Glory, yeah, that's a tough
My
one.
favorite, Glory was one of them. You, Me, and Us. And Dirty Window.
Yes. And both of those have So Free on it. And I was so excited. I've known her for a long time, and I was so excited because she hasn't really done anything in a minute. And I kind of pull, I was like, look, I need you. And so it was good to be able to get that pull off. Yeah.
It was good because it felt like you guys were having, it was like a conversation that needed to be had. You know what I mean? Like, let me tell you how I feel and what I've been going through. And it was like the same in how you see us. Survive. I love that.
Shout out to our Veteran Jones.
Yes. His cousin. Yes.
Yeah, shout out to him.
My cousin.
So what are some of your favorite? You name some of your rappers. So what are some of your favorite jazz musicians or live bands?
Ooh. So I really Robert Glasper is my guy. Bands like, I really like, I like Terrence Martin and Kamasi Washington. I'm getting more into kind of like Thundercat and like Flying Lotus, like that kind of vibe. But Christian McBride is someone who I fell in love. Like I was just like, oh yeah, he amazing musician. There's Moonchild is a band, Snarky Puppy, like that kind of contemporary jazz. I'm a big traditional jazz. I'm still educating myself on, Coltrane, Cannonball Adderley, Miles, that kind of thing. I'm still growing in, but contemporary jazz, these contemporary jazz artists, I love. I'm a Zoe and Big Tall Guy, like that kind of vibe. I'm really into.
Okay. So have you ever wrote a piece or started on a piece that you just couldn't finish because it was so powerful or did something to you emotionally? get it on stage or just writing and starting out when you first thought of it?
Yes, I have, and I've learned to sit those down. And I tell my students, like, sit it down, because the way that I think about it, I'm like, in those moments, the poem, that what you're doing is for you, like that. There's something going on, and you've got to work that through, and then decide what you want to do with that for after. So the first thing I do, I sit that I got to set that thing down. And
why you sit it down? Why you don't let people hear it and feel it?
The one thing about it is that art does not care about your feelings. If it's there, it wants it. And so, once it starts coming up, like, everything is coming with it. Like, and so sometimes, I'll be in my feelings and I'm just like, let me take a moment, and then I'll come back, because at that point in time, when I come back, I got to make a decision about if I'm really, really ready to go there. 90% of the times I do, because I trust the process.
So can you tell me one that you've done like that? Tell me more about one that really did that to you.
So the first one that kind of took me there actually ended up being really powerful for my whole family. So it was one I came up with this idea, and it started with an image, which is what happens a lot of times. If I can start to see something, I can write my way to what I see. Mm-hmm. And I had this idea of my pops would come get me and, like, take me, to the store, and, like, we'd hang out for a little while, and then he'd go off. And my pops struggled with alcoholism, like, most of my life. And the thing was that I was just kind of moving through all of these images of that I remembered, and it kind of hit me, like, I could vividly remember these particular moments, and then I had to make a decision, because by this time I'm performing, and I'm like, so are we going to do this? And I said, okay, let's do it. Let's see this all the way through. And then, of course, when you're done, the next thing is okay, now, am I ready to say this in front of anybody?
Yeah.
And I did. And the thing about it was there were so many other folks who had similar experiences. Mm-hmm. And so then, of course, the next thing that happened was my mom heard it. I decided, I'm gonna see. So she came to an event, and I did it. And her first thing was, I didn't know you remembered that much.
Wow.
And that's when I kind of really understood what, like, that. Like, I recognized that what I was feeling was real. Like, the fact that I sat there and I was like, damn, I realized that I wasn't crazy, because she was like, I didn't know you remembered that much, or that remembered it that vividly. And so, and then I was able to, we kind of coerced him into showing up, and I did it for him. And it was the first time that I heard him be like, he didn't lie. Right. Like, he was like, I can't argue anything he said. Like, it's all true. Like he did not lie. And so that was a big moment. But that thing, because of, we get taught, you don't air out dirty laundry like that.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's why I asked you that, because I knew, I had a feeling that people could relate or would relate to it. And you said you finally did it. So how was you and your father's relationship, even though he was on alcohol a lot? How was your relationship?
His mother made sure we had one. My parents were teenage sweethearts, and they had me. My mom was 16, my dad was 17. So I kind of grew up with them growing up.
Yeah.
And so so his mom, my grandmother, was real involved in everything. I had, I kind of, and I'm the, one of the oldest grandchilds on one side and the oldest on the other. And so, of course, the battle between the two matriarchs over the grandbaby. But she made sure we knew each other. And then as I got older, I sort of carried a little bit of responsibility for, like, keeping an eye on him as he was out maneuvering in the streets and what have you. Was sort of like implied that, like,
yeah,
you go check on your pops, like go over it, like, you know. And so because of that, we'd had a relationship, whether it was good or bad, we've always had one. The funny thing about it is I wrote that poem, and that kind of was me reconciled with that as an adult. And then the last poem I said I was ever going to write about it, I wrote, and my grandmother passed, and I said, I'm not writing about this anymore. I'm done. And, you know, it is what it is with him and how he chooses to live his life. And he then decided that he wanted to stop drinking. But like, it was this journey that we had been on. And so, and then of course, because that's how I was raised, I'm the person he called. He's like, look, this is what I want to do. And I'm looking for help, and I need your help to figure out like what I need to do. And we figured it out. And so he took the steps. But my grandmother was the glue. She was like, regardless of what capacity he has to actually be a father, you need to know him. You need to know where he's at. And you know, he's going to need you. And so that was kind of how I was taught. And I was also taught that it was okay if, you know, whenever, you know, however I felt about it was also okay. So it wasn't like I had to, you know, it was like an obligation, but I didn't have to set aside my feelings about how he moved or how he lived. So I appreciate her for that, because otherwise we wouldn't have had one. Because she also made sure that he was around enough for me to be like a guilty conscience. Like, you still got responsibilities, and, you know, and he's, you know, there's 8 of us for him, you know. I'm the oldest. There's like, I think there's, my baby sister is 30. I think it's like 20 years over the 8 of us. Yeah. But yeah.
Wow. Now let me ask you this. When you talk about, you know, having kind of expressing yourself through poetry with people in the audience, have you ever had like a love interest that maybe you guys broke up at one point in time, or there was some feelings there at one point in time, and you're like, and they're there, and you're like, this is the perfect time?
So I got in trouble for that. So you learn some lessons when you're a poet. You know, that I had a run. I had a pretty cool run.
Had a Love Jones moment.
Yeah, you know, I had a pretty good, you know, because you I got a microphone. Like, I see you. I've seen you a couple times. Let me go ahead and like let you know what it is, but it also gives me a chance to kind of gauge, because I can mask it. I can say things that only you would know who I'm talking about, and I can. If
so, you know, as women, we live for that. So you got to tell us more.
So if I see the response, then I'm like, okay, all right. And so I had those moments where you kind of, and I'm letting you know that I've seen you each time you've shown up. Like, the poem is very clear in terms of like things you've worn or things you've done, like, right, but not stalkerish, you know, not but like in this way that like I know when you walk in the room, and and so I had success. Actually, you know, someone who we were together for a while, that was one of the Mets. And it was so funny that you said what you said, because ultimately, by the time when I finally, you know, I'd done it a couple of times, and like she was like, look, I kept showing up because I was waiting on you. So it was this thing of, we both knew what was going on. And the minute that I started, she was like, okay, so like I'm writing this stuff and making these references, and she's showing up to inspire them. And it's like, how long you going? Come on, bro. Like, when you But I also, it's powerful. And I get on stage. We had this falling out. I get on stage and do a diss poem.
Oh wow.
Oh my goodness, I got cussed. Oh my goodness, I got cussed out.
Really?
Oh my goodness, I got cussed out. I still think I was right. But I didn't have to do that. It was
Yeah. See, the good thing is if nobody knows what happened or, how the breakup ended or whatever, then I don't know. The Aquarius in me, I'm going to hold my chin up and I'm going to walk out. But then the other part of me is I'm going to be giving you the evil eye while you're on stage. Like, no, you didn't. No, you didn't.
Oh, yeah, she, and I could see it. I did it and it started, and I could just see her getting madder.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was a point where I was like, okay, all right, I can deal with that. And she kept getting mad. And I was like, ooh, because it was good. It was good. The crowd was going.
Yeah.
So bad. Crowd was going crazy. Man. She was livid. And so I had to kind of tone that down. I had to be careful. But it is a thing that happens, and I've seen it happen to so many men, where it's like, that you can see it in their face when they're sitting there like, this is about me, and I'm like, buckle up. But yeah, I had to chill out. I had a nice little run, and then it blew up in my face, and I said, let me be careful about what I do on this.
The problem is once you get back in that situation, then the expectation is there, right? For you to at least acknowledge something, whether it's a black shoe, a hat, something, so you can't run away from it altogether because you're going to have to, sprinkle something in somewhere.
Yeah, it's tricky. It's tricky. And then, after a while, you also don't, I had to run from you're a poet, write me a poem. No, that's not how that works.
Oh, yeah.
You don't get to ask for it.
All day long.
Yeah, like this is still, you don't request. We don't take requests. Like DJ, we don't take requests. It's got to happen. You can inspire one. You can ask for one.
Have you ever inspired someone to write one for you who would have never thought to even do it?
I have had that experience as well, and it's flattering, but it's also, and that was another thing also about kind of shifting, because it's flattering, but you have to be, if you're not ready for it, it's a little awkward.
Yeah, you be judging.
Me, yeah.
I'm judging like
roses are red, violets are blue,
So that's the other thing. Don't let it be roses are red or violets are blue, because I gotta work real hard to pretend like that you did something. Because
I mean, listen, I know my strengths and my weaknesses, right? And although I talk a lot, I'm still a woman of few words. So my how I present are in action. So, if I do a roses are red and violets are blue for anybody, just know that it took me a lot to get there. It took me a lot to get there, to write down something,
So speaking of that, excluding your women, do you write hoping that you get an emotional reaction from people in the crowd at times, or do you think about how I can maybe tug at someone's heartstring in your words? How do you go about that?
Initially, you do. I stopped because and the reason why is because I perform. So like I'm experiencing in real time what people's responses are, and if you are expecting one thing and get something different, it can really affect you. And so I know that if I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, there's going to be something that's going to happen. I stopped thinking about what it could be or writing and expecting anything, because I've had some experiences where even positive, but that the response was not a thing I expected or anticipated that the poem would do, and it threw me off. So now, if I was just writing and publishing, then I want the person reading this to feel this way here and there. But because I'm on stage and I can see it and feel it in real time, and I've had so many different kinds of things. I've learned so much about what can happen. I'm just along for the ride. It's my job to just do what I do and let the room and let the energy kind of just take over. And you'll be surprised. Some folks, the same two people can be sitting beside each other, and one person will cry and the other person will frown. And they're both feeling the same thing. Like they're both responding to the same thing. And it's wild to experience, to know that you can do that, like that you can have that kind of impact on folks. Me, just like every other artist, we've had folks come to us crying. Folks say we saved their lives. Folks wanting to, confess. Folks, I was at a show one time. I'm at a bar. I go to the bar. I sit down at the bar. The person beside me orders me a drink. Like, what you drinking? I tell him what I'm drinking. He orders it. He turns to me and he says, I can tell that you're a believer. And it's good to be. It's good to hear someone who knows God. We're at a bar and I'm drinking whiskey. Like it's but this is what this does. And I was never prepared. I was in no way prepared for that when I started. But it's a thing that comes with this. So yeah, it's a good point. When I first started, that was my thing, because it's just like right in the bar, like, ooh, they're gonna go crazy when I hear this and when I do this. But the reality is so much more intense than what you could imagine it.
So speaking of, performing and live music and, Tiny Desk, do you go live on Instagram and kind of do some of your poetry live?
I don't. And I was just having a conversation with someone who was saying that I should do that more. So it's something someone actually recommended that I don't think about. I might record a video and post it, but but that was really,
I mean, if you think about it, and no shade to anyone, D-Nice, I mean, although we knew about him, right? But how did he become at all of these different tables? What did he do? Mm-hmm. He DJ'd at night, right, during the pandemic. And everybody kind of flocked to him. Prior to that, he was around, but he wasn't at, where he is now. Mm-hmm. So where there's other, cultures and people, different nationalities that know him now versus, back in the day. So I think it says something, because you're able to touch more lives.
Yeah, I'm gonna do it. This is affirmation, because I just recently had this conversation, and hearing it come back, and now you've said it. Mm-hmm. That these kind of moments I trust, and I'm like, okay, well then let's make it happen. So it's about to go down, and I owe it all to you, Renee, for being the person who was.
I'm gonna hold you to it. Then you move that onto your Facebook, and you just bring your audience back and forth.
Yeah,
why not? I'm here for it, especially with your new album. I think it's because it's a vibe, and it's not your average. Sometimes when you think of like poetry or slam poetry, a lot of people have a different perspective of it, but yours is so smooth. Like you can clean the house with it and just let it go.
That's exactly what I was looking for. Thank you. That's exactly what I was looking for. Mm-hmm. To find that balance. I wanted to be playable. I wanted to still be content rich, but I wanted it to feel good, and for you to, play it in the mix with whatever else you're playing.
Yeah. And it's not too long where people kind of get lost into it. So it's just like just the right amount, So yeah. I think you should definitely do lives on IG and TikTok, whatever where your platforms are and your audience is, and bring more awareness to slam poetry, because I'm here for it.
There it is.
Do you I lost my train of thought, but do you think this ain't what I was gonna ask, but what do you think you can do better, or do you think you reach your peak?
No, you don't retire as an artist, and you continue to grow. I think the thing that, and also I'm learning, I used to say this, I say this about Jay-Z, for example, in terms of when everybody started to be like, he doesn't sound like he used to. And just because, you know, I love to listen to folks. I'm like, you're never going to get that because he knows how to say the same thing a different way. And I'm at that point where, you know, there are times where I realize that I would totally have said something different 5, 6, 7 years ago. But I've learned enough that I don't need to say it that way. And so I think the thing that I want to get better at this point in time, is seeing, you know, more intersections. I want to see. This series was part of that. This series was like, I've done a lot of music work. I've done a lot of collaborations, and I really want to see what I can do in terms of really setting an accessible, smooth, like I want to blend this thing, and then let's see what else we can do with this art form. You know, I'm an older artist, so I've been at this a long time. So I want to, you know, the thing I want to grow into is what kind of unique and distinct projects. If I'm saying I'm a master craftsman, like what does that mean? You know, what should I be out here building and creating? If I put my Malcolm Gladwell hours in, then, you know, what I should be pushing myself. So that's sort of what I'm looking at now is really trying to study and look at the way other artists have kind of grown and elevated through their career. And I want to do some monumental things, but that are reflective of my, you know, of my experience.
Who was the, outside of your you know, your parents and your grandmother, everyone, you know, your father, whomever, who was that person where you had that aha moment that people really listening to me, people hear me, like I made it?
It's you start having those conversations after you get done performing. And like I said, it'll blow your mind. I just wanted to know, God put it on my heart to let you know you have an anointing. Say what? Like, yeah. what conversation are we having right now? Like, there was a moment where I had a young kid come to me. He's crying, and it's an outdoor festival, and I'm looking around like, first of all, it's a white kid, and I'm black, and I'm like, look. He comes over and he says, my mom wants to talk to you. I start to follow him. The whole family is all wound up. I go over. They tell me that the poem, the mom had just had gone through that experience. The whole family had done it. She had survived, and next thing you know, we all hugged up. Like, these are these kinds of moments when someone's like, you know, I came here tonight and I really didn't know how I was going to make it to tomorrow, and I heard you. And like, and I have a, you know, I mentioned, there's a poem that I have where I mentioned some of these experiences. There was a woman who came up to me. I was at this community college. She said, I used to write, but I haven't been able to write. My father committed suicide and I haven't written since. The next morning, she emailed me a poem. It was the first poem she had written in 6 years.
Wow.
Like, these kinds of things were when I was like, okay, this is like, not only is my work resonating, but also I got to be really responsible about this because of the way people are listening to me. And so I got to be careful. But like those kind of moments when they're happening, especially when you're traveling and like, you know, you got folks who you will never see again coming to, you know, to share. And so that was it. The thing that, but to also answer your question, the thing that also happened, that sort of wasn't, those are the moments that it lets me know like the power, like that what I'm like, particularly for me, that what I'm writing resonates. But there was a moment that kind of shifted in terms of someone kind of trying to let me know that, and I didn't see it. Was there was an elder writer, not elder, she wasn't elder, she was older than me, because I'm in my 20s, and she stops me and she said, "Is that all you gonna do?" You know what I'm saying? And I'm young, I'm hitting the spots, everybody's responding, but she sort of hit me like, "Is that like you satisfied with what you writing?" And I was pissed. I was pissed. And then so I was pissed for a couple of days. And I said, you know what? I'm gonna prove her wrong. I'm gonna write, so I kind of call myself writing this like really serious, like really intentional poetic piece. And we went to a show. I got called up, and the host, after I got done, the room was kind of like, what the hell is that? And the host gets up and goes, "All right, y'all applaud for this sign. He doesn't usually do pieces like that." And I was like, so what happened is that I realized what she saw. She was like, people are responding to these pieces, but like, this is how they see you. This is what they expect from you. And so, is this how you want to be seen as a poet? And after I had that experience, the next time that I saw her, I had gone back to the lab and kind of just checked in, like, nah, that's not how I want to be seen. And she was like, so what you gonna do? And that was the push, was to be a student of the craft. And that was that moment I was like, let me go get some books. Let me start studying. Let me like really get to it. Because she was the first person to be like, look, I'm trying to tell you, this thing, you have the potential and people are actually listening to you. So are you sure that's what you want to give them? And I was happy. I was like, yeah. At that point in time, I had got me some numbers out of it. I'm getting response, I'm getting applause, people laughing, but I didn't get it. And she helped me see it. And I'll never forget her for that. She was a grad student at the USC at the time. So she wasn't an elder, but she was like, she saw it. And ever since then, I started to kind of understand it too.
Wow.
Amazing.
See, touching people, all generations, cultures, all the things.
Then our phone conversations, you told me you wrote a book, or you have a book out, or I think it was a few books. Is that correct?
Yeah. So this is book 6.
Okay.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. I
started. Where can it be found first before you go into it? Where can we purchase them?
So anywhere books are sold. I always say that I would love it if you went to your local bookstore and asked them to order it for you.
Okay.
Because they're orderable. They're in the system, especially my most recent books. They're available, and so you can go to your local bookstore. But if not, Amazon, Barnes & Noble online, you can get them. But I'd love it if folks would go to the bookstore and order them and ask. If enough people go to a bookstore, they'll keep them on the shelf. But we got to support our bookstore. So, so they're available everywhere.
So what is your latest one about, or are they all about poems, or how to write poems, or just personal stories?
All of them are books of poetry. So the most recent one is called A Month of Sundays, A Journey Through Black Southern Christianity. Starting in 2016, on the tail end of like that time period from like 2012 to 2016, we had Mike Brown, like we'd had like a lot going on. And we're, last tail end of Obama, like there was a lot. So I decided I wanted to write more about Black life. And so the first book I wrote was called Everything We're Fighting For, an experience of being Black in America. And there's 3 books in what I call my Black Life series. The second one is a love letter to the South called Shackled Freedom, Black Living in the Modern American South. And then this last one is A Month of Sundays, A Journey Through Black Southern Christianity. And so they're all really intentional about talking about Black folks and Black life in the South. There are poems that are each theme kind of collects the poems, but also there's an introduction from someone that I asked to kind of help frame that moment. And then also it talks a little bit about the power of art as a tool for change and transformation. So also there across the books, there's sort of this kind of framework for like arts and activism and art and change. It's like the most recent book, it's really because my pastor is big in liberation theology, like he's also a mentor. So like this idea of churches, especially for in times of social justice, being a haven for the community. And so when we think about where we are now, is that still the case, and what does that mean? So in terms of just thinking about the Black South, we have to understand that the church was a big part of a lot of the change that was made. And so, but that's it. And then in 2023, I was named the Piedmont Laureate for North Carolina for poetry, and it was an amazing honor. And so over my term, Piedmont Laureate. So I was the poet laureate for the Piedmont is the central region of North Carolina. They call it the Piedmont.
What is laureate?
A laureate is an ambassador. An ambassador. So we have a United States Poet Laureate, and states will have a poet laureate, which is just an ambassador for the art form, who, you know, does events, teaches, kind of promotes the art form across communities. And so this laureateship is it's a literary position. So you have nonfiction writers, playwrights, children's literature, like all of these. And so I was the laureate for poetry, Piedmont Laureate for poetry. And I released a book of poetry inspired by Andre 3000's interview with Rick Rubin that came out during the pandemic. And I was so inspired by, because that was like the first time in a long time he sat down to really talk about why he was gone, you know, why he, you know, left Outkast and all of that. And so I was so inspired, I started writing. I mean, it was a pandemic. And so those are like my last 4 books. There's those 3 books in that series. Month of Sundays is the most recent one. It came out in March. And then that book, that Andre 3000 inspired book, is called A Brilliant Uncertain Rebellion. My first 2 books, my first book, I didn't know nothing about putting the book together. I was teaching and I did it. I self-published my first 2 books just to learn. The second book, I kind of understood how to put a book together. And so right now, these last 2 books have been released by a press called Willow Books. Amazing publisher, Black woman out of the Midwest, has had faith in the work and supported that. But yeah, it's a beautiful end to this series. But I wanted to take my time to really write about my folks.
That's nice. Now, I did see somewhere that you were up, or you're being considered for a Grammy.
Yes. So the album Storyteller Volume 2 is in consideration for Best Spoken Word Poetry Album. The voting starts October 4th through the 15th, and they'll announce the nominees in November. So right now we are really hoping, to grab a nomination, and so really excited about being able to get this project done and get it submitted. And so so the Grammy, you know, for those who don't know, this is the 3rd year of spoken word poetry having its own category. It used to be spoken word, comedy, and all of the audio books, and all of that was all in one category. Audio books currently has its own category. Comedy does, and they were able to get a category specifically for spoken word poetry. So this is the third year of the new category, and it's a really beautiful thing. It was hard for that old category because usually one of the presidents or somebody famous would usually win if they released an audiobook or something. And so as poets, and it was tough. Occasionally you get a comedy album that won. I think Dave Chappelle's one, you know, if you at a certain level. Poets, it was really tough. Prior to our new category, the person who got nominated, it was like the first nomination since Maya Angelou, and it had been years. So you know, there was a real effort to establish a separate category, and so now we have one. So really excited to be able to have a submission this year.
Oh yeah.
And so just, I want folks to give it a listen. Spread
And
the word.
nomination time again is October
4th through the 15th is when voting happens. So, spread the word.
Absolutely.
I want folks to give it a listen. I know they're going to enjoy it, but yes, so we do have it in consideration for Grammy nomination.
You gotta make sure you post that on Facebook when it comes around.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, I'll definitely share the links, even in all my groups, all of my discords that I'm in.
Is there anything that we missed or we didn't ask that you want to tell us about?
Yeah.
No, I think I think this has been an amazing interview. I really appreciate it. I do see that. I do see this. You know what I'm saying? I do see these hats though. You know what I'm saying? I think I didn't notice the logo on his hats.
Yeah. Well, since you said it, is let me. This is sponsored by Impel Forward.
Yes.
The Impel Forward brand. So this is a few. And
Okay.
I have merch.
That's cute.
Impel Forward merch.com. Anyone who's ever listening can go to it and check out the merch. Impelforward.com, impelforwardmerch.com, or impelforward.com. The impelforward.com has my bio and all that on there too. So either or.
I'm going to check that out. I like that. All right, that's clean. I've been eyeing it the whole time. So.
Appreciate it, man. It was good having you on here, man. It's
yeah. I was a little nervous. I'm not gonna lie.
Why was you nervous?
I don't know. You remember you were like, "Hey," he hit me back, and I was just like, "Well, what?" Remember, I was like, "Well, what questions did I ask him?"
Yeah, I said, "Look, go get something together."
Yeah. Nah, this has been a great conversation. I appreciate y'all.
Yeah, it was.
So, do you often do interviews, or have you did any other? I know you said this is your first podcast. Been on your first podcast.
Yeah, I whenever I get a chance to, I haven't done a lot of podcasts. And so, but I admire the space. So right. I'm excited to be able to do that, which is one other reason why I did the call. I'm like, I haven't, I've seen some really dope work that folks are doing in this space as it's kind of expanded. And I was like, I'd love to be able to have some conversation with some folks. So yeah, so this is great. And this is why, because this was good. Now I'll be honest, I've there's lots of times I've said, oh man, yeah, thank you for the interview. But no, this was real dope. So I appreciate y'all.
Absolutely.
Oh, one thing I want to know. So is this your real name?
Oh no. So it's not. That was one of the naming happened when I decided I was going to actually read. I got really nervous. And so my name is Christopher Massenberg.
Christopher Massenberg, okay.
In the last name, yes, y'all, it sounds German. It's the name of the plantation. So freed slaves in North Carolina, when they left the plantation, they took the plantation name as last name. So there's different sets of Massenbergs that all kind of have tied to this plantation in North Carolina. And so I was like, and I'm in this, this cultural, really bohemian spot. And I'm like, I can't get on the stage talking about some Chris Massenberg. Like, it's not what's happening in here with these folks. So I started thinking and kind of searching, and being a hip hop head, you've got names you toss around in the cipher, but I was like, that don't work either. I need something. And so that's how I came. My grandmother, on my father's side, my dad's mom is my grandmother. My mom's mom made all her grandchildren call her nanny. So that's like naming is a very particular thing in my family. My middle name, my nanny gave me, and the family called me by my middle name because the matriarch named me that.
Yeah.
My first name, Christopher, my mom gave me, and anywhere other than around family, I use that because my mama gave it to me. But like even that was attention because her mama said, I don't care what you name the boy, we call him Dion. That's my middle name. And that's what the family and that's what everybody did because when Big Mama speak, that's what it is. So that's what I knew. So I said, okay, well, if I don't feel comfortable, then I'm going to make myself comfortable by giving myself a name. And Dasan means ruler. It's Native American, which is paying homage to my grandmother's side of the family and how, grandmamas love to argue over features. And it was this thing about my features being that side of the family. And Ahanu is someone who laughs. So San is ruler, Ahanu is someone who laughs. And it's in their indigenous translations to these names. And so I decided that it was someone who commands with a sense of humor.
Wow. Okay. Have you thought about doing an official name change?
No.
No?
Because of the way that
Dion and Dasan.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a lot.
So I know who's calling me based on what they call me.
Okay.
Because that makes sense. If depend how you know me is what you're going to say. Especially age-wise, which is another thing. Because if you're closer to my age and you know me artistically, even if you call me something else, you probably call me by Dasan by now. If you still call me by one of my two given names, oh, you're older and I know better. So let me.
Yeah.
I'm gonna call him Clay. I'm gonna call him Clay.
So yeah, very much so. Like depending on where I'm at, if I hear it, I'm like, oh, okay, this person knows me for real. Because that's the only way.
So I thought we was about to wrap it up, but I got another question. So speaking of you speak about your grandmothers a lot. Both of them still living?
No. My nanny passed in 2007 and my grandmother passed in 2016. So so that was and for my family that was big. Which is just also the thing about this most recent book. The cover of the book is a painting and their portraits of both of my grandmothers. Like they're the inspiration for this book being a part of the series because that was their thing. That was the way they raised us, was in faith. And so, and also being dynamic, you know what I'm saying? Like being, God-fearing Southern women who both also carry pistols. Like that thing for me was not rigid in my family in terms of the way that they operated, the way that I saw that. So, but they were still very faithful and the only folks I've ever seen like make miracles happen because we never went without, like they took care of things. So like that's my model. So those two very, very important for me.
Nice.
Man, this is a good conversation.
I know. Let the people know how to get a hold of you.
Yeah, so I'm Dasan Ahanu. Dasan Ahanu, one word across all things. Website is dasanahanu.com.
Got it. We'll have to link it in the description box.
So what give us something to leave an upcoming poet?
The thing that I would tell any poet is that think about this in two ways. The poem that comes to you is for you. The poem that everyone else gets is what you have crafted for them. And sometimes those two may not be the same. I talk to a lot of poets who struggle with that because the poem that came to them may be really heavy and they worry about whether or not they can be that vulnerable. But the poem for the people doesn't have to be the poem that was for you. You, the writer, get to decide how much of that story you want to tell at any given moment and how much of that truth you want to share. And so that is part of how you grow as a writer. Because the more you're able to kind of work your way through what you carry with you, the more you'll have to offer people. But But I think any young poet, that's what I want to offer. The poem that comes to you doesn't have to be the poem you give to folks.
Okay. All right. Well, there you have it. For another episode of the Impel Forward podcast. Stay tuned for the next episode. And remember, seize the opportunity to grasp your dreams.